Hello, my dear viewers. Good news arrived on the screen, and a true news. Congratulations. Early morning, June 3rd. But this news came from yesterday, even 2nd of June. What happened? I tell you what happened. Listen.
Let's bring in our panel right now. Paula Reed, Siobhan Hughes, Rebecca Roy, and Molly Hooper. Paula is a CBS News White House correspondent. Siobhan is a Capitol Hill reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Rebecca is a CBSN legal contributor and also a former assistant district attorney for the New York County District Attorney's Office. And Molly is a CBSN political contributor.
The White House just released a statement moments ago saying this was one of the most shameful political episodes in American history. Meantime, Democrats say they did not take the decision to impeach the president lightly.
Today we took action to hold President Trump accountable for the serious and undisputed risk he poses to our free and fair elections and to the separation of powers that safeguards our liberty. A president must not be allowed to become a dictator.
And it was something, again, like you said, Elaine, and as I've heard from Republican and Democratic lawmakers, it was a win that they could take home to their districts to say, okay, we did the impeachment, but look what else we accomplished. We were able to fund the government, pass the National Defense Authorization, and this big trade deal. Yeah. So, Siobhan, I just want to go back to you again. What's your understanding? Because now it sounds as though there's a bit of counter leverage here on the part of Mitch McConnell as he sees this now happening with the Speaker. There was this trade deal that was supposed to be voted on and be something, as Molly has pointed out, that was tangible, a piece of legislation, a done deal that these lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, would be able to bring back and point to as a measure of success and accomplishment. So to me, this is almost shaping up as a game of chicken because that trade deal is due to be passed in the House tomorrow. And so Nancy Pelosi can confidently say that she passed a trade deal and it's on you, Mitch McConnell. And then you could see a bit of a blame game ensuing, although for the Republicans' part, they say, you know what, we don't want to impeach the president anyway, so fine by us if you don't send those articles up. Interesting. All right. So the other interesting thing is that, according to this rule, remember we were talking about the rules that set the parameters of debate for the House floor as an illegitimate seizure of power. He called it treason, accusing the members of Congress who voted to hold him accountable of betraying the country rather than fulfilling their constitutional obligations. He called it election interference, reframing a congressional impeachment vote as an attack on democratic processes rather than an exercise of them. The pattern was familiar to anyone who has watched his responses to previous accountability efforts. But the context made it more alarming because this is now the third time he has been impeached. It also addresses that, essentially, after any article of impeachment is adopted, the Speaker has as much time as she wants to appoint and authorize managers for the impeachment trial. So she doesn't even have to do it necessarily this year. She could do it when Congress comes back in January. And perhaps that does happen, because if you listen to Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, they're talking past each other, and they need to talk to each other. Also, Mitch McConnell needs to take the temperature of Republican senators to find out how aggressive they are willing to get with calling witnesses, because if 4 Republicans say, hey, I think we need to hear from John Bolton, then maybe this becomes a little bit more fair for Democrats. All right, so meanwhile, Paula, it was quite the split-screen moment this evening as the president was in Michigan speaking at a rally while the House was voting to impeach him. What was the president's message to supporters tonight? Well, Elaine, he told the crowd it certainly doesn't feel like impeachment, and he touted his economic record and the party unity from the beginning of this process. Elaine, we've heard the president call for his party to rally around him. And I've spoken with a top White House official who tells me they're quite pleased with the support that they've seen on the Hill, especially ahead of this likely Senate trial. He used this rhetoric against the constitutional impeachment process. Think about what it means for a president to be impeached 3 times. No other president in American history has been impeached more than once. Andrew Johnson faced a single impeachment and survived removal by a single vote in the Senate. Bill Clinton faced a single impeachment and was acquitted. Donald Trump has now faced 3 separate impeachment votes in the House of Representatives. three separate occasions on which the chamber constitutionally charged with initiating impeachment proceedings has concluded that his conduct met the threshold of high crimes and misdemeanors. But the president sort of shifted the attention at this rally forward, looking at 2020, reminding his supporters that he is, of course, facing re-election. We've heard him attack many of his Democratic rivals, Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Senator Elizabeth Warren, and the president has at least once acknowledged this historic vote, that he has now become the third U.S. president to be impeached by the House of Representatives. But he's trying to tell this audience, convince them that this is all just a sham, that this is an effort to invalidate their votes, and he's trying to channel all this energy looking ahead to November 2020. They're trying to use this impeachment to motivate voters. So, Rebecca, let's take a moment to look at what actually happened today, the start of which seemed oh so long ago. Let's talk about the actual charges against President Trump. So Democrats decided not to include an article about bribery, despite saying repeatedly that that's what he committed. Republicans seized on that today. Let's go ahead and listen to Republican Congressman Doug Collins. Remember, quid pro quo didn't work out real well for him because that was supposedly putting pressure on Mr. Zelensky. In fact, it didn't work out so well that you had to go poll test it. The majority didn't work out because focus groups didn't like it. So what do? We throw it in here. A bribe. It's all in their report. But if they had a bribe, if they actually had a crime, it'd be in the articles. Guess what? He doesn't have it. He can't put it in there. This is all fluff and circumstance because they can't get to the president, and that's what's killing them. This is not a statistical anomaly or a quirk of political timing. This is a pattern that reflects something fundamental about the relationship between this particular president and the constitutional constraints on executive power. The accumulation of 3 impeachments establishes a historical record that will define his legacy, regardless of what happens in any Senate trial, regardless of whether any of these impeachments result in removal, and regardless of how effectively his supporters dismiss each individual proceeding as partisan theater. The permanent institutional documentation of 3 separate congressional determinations that he committed impeachable offenses is now part of the American constitutional record forever. The specific charges in this 3rd impeachment go directly to the question of what limits exist on a president's ability to use military force. The articles of impeachment accuse Trump of abusing his power by ordering offensive strikes without congressional approval. They accuse him of violating the Constitution by deliberately circumventing the war powers allocation that Article 1 places squarely in the hands of the legislative branch.